Earth's unified response. Revelation of hidden human capabilities. The counter-offensive begins. Zephyrian fleet in retreat. The final confrontation. Humanity's emergence on the galactic stage. The new galactic order. Part 1. The arrogant empire. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. From their crystalline throne world of Zephyria Prime, they commanded an armada of warships that could darken entire star systems. Their technology was unmatched, their warriors feared across 1,000,000 worlds. Emperor Corthax, the latest in a dynasty of conquerors, sat upon his obsidian throne, gazing at star maps that showed every inhabited planet under Zephyrian control. Every planet except one. Earth. The Emperor spoke the word like it left a bitter taste in his mouth. A primitive backwater that has somehow avoided our attention for far too long. His chief advisor, Velnak, shifted uncomfortably. The old Zephyrian scales had dulled with age, but his mind remained sharp. He remembered stories from his youth, whispered tales that most have forgotten. Your Excellency, perhaps we should consult the ancient archives before proceeding. There were warnings about that particular world. Corthax laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the throne room. The Emperor was young by Zephyrian standards, having ruled for only 3 centuries. He had conquered a dozen worlds himself, each victory easier than the last. Warnings? About a species that has barely mastered spaceflight. They still burn fossil fuels, Velnak. They wage war among themselves with projectile weapons. What possible threat could they pose to the might of the Zephyrian Empire? Deep in the forgotten vaults beneath the Imperial Palace, dust-covered data crystals held records from the early days of galactic civilization. Among them was a file marked with the highest security classification, sealed by the Galactic Council millennia ago. The file contained a simple message. The humans of Earth are not what they appear. Do not provoke them. Their potential, once awakened, cannot be contained. But Emperor Corthax had no interest in dusty warnings from dead civilizations. He had already given the order. The 7th Imperial Fleet, comprising 500 warships, was already emerging from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. Admiral Zix, commander of the fleet, transmitted his first report back to Zephyria Prime. Initial scans confirm intelligence reports. Your Excellency, the humans have no significant space defenses, a few primitive satellites, and a small station orbiting their world. Their military forces are divided among competing nations. This will be a simple conquest. The Zephyrian ships move through the solar system like predators stalking prey. They passed the outer planets without incident, their sensors detecting no hidden defenses or secret bases. Earth grew larger in their view screens, a blue and green jewel that would soon be added to the Emperor's collection. On Earth, the arrival of the alien fleet did not go unnoticed. In underground bunkers and secret facilities around the world, screens lit up with data. Phones rang in the dead of night, waking generals and presidents. Within hours, an emergency session of the United Nations was called. For the first time in human history, every nation put aside their differences to face a common threat. The Zephyrians sent their standard conquest message, broadcast on all frequencies. Admiral Zix appeared on every screen on Earth, his reptilian features cold and imperious. People of Earth, you are now subjects of the Zephyrian Empire. Surrender immediately, and you will be treated with mercy. Resist, and you will be destroyed. The response from Earth was not what the Zephyrians expected. Instead of panic or immediate surrender, there was silence. Then, after exactly 1 hour, a single message was transmitted back. We decline your offer. Admiral Zix was puzzled. In his long career, he had never encountered such a simple refusal. No threats, no bargaining, just a polite rejection. He turned to his tactical officer. Begin the standard subjugation protocol. Target their major population centers. Once they see our power, they will submit. The first wave of Zephyrian attack craft descended toward Earth's atmosphere. These were the Empire's finest warriors, each pilot having conquered worlds before. They expected to sweep aside Earth's primitive aircraft with ease. What they encountered instead shook them to their core. Human fighter jets rose to meet them, and while their technology was indeed inferior, their pilots flew with a determination that bordered on insanity. Where Zephyrian pilots would retreat when outmatched, humans pressed their attacks even unto death. Damaged aircraft were turned into weapons, ramming into Zephyrian ships. It was chaos unlike anything the invaders had experienced. But it was what happened next that truly shocked the Zephyrians. As their ground forces began landing in major cities, expecting to face disorganized resistance, they found something else entirely. The humans had prepared, not with advanced weapons or shields, but with an understanding of warfare that seemed impossible for such a young species. Ambushes waited around every corner. Improvised explosives turned buildings into death traps. Civilians fought alongside soldiers with whatever weapons they could find. The Zephyrians, used to populations that surrendered once their military was defeated, couldn't comprehend this level of resistance. In New York City, a single human soldier held off an entire Zephyrian platoon for 6 hours using nothing but determination and knowledge of the terrain. In Tokyo, citizens formed human chains to move supplies while under bombardment. In London, children helped construct barricades while their grandparents shared stories of previous wars, inspiring even greater resistance. The Zephyrian losses began to mount. Admiral Zix watched the casualty reports with growing disbelief. His forces were technically superior in every way, yet they were being slowly ground down by an enemy that simply refused to surrender. Even more disturbing were the reports of human adaptability. Within days, Earth's scientists had begun reverse engineering captured Zephyrian technology. Weapons that had taken the Empire centuries to develop were being understood and improved upon in mere hours. "This is impossible," Zix muttered, studying the tactical displays. "They're learning too fast, adapting too quickly. No species can progress at this rate." His science officer approached with a disturbing report. "Admiral, we've detected unusual neural activity in the humans we've scanned. Their brains are operating at efficiency levels we've never seen before. It's as if the threat of extinction has activated dormant capabilities." Back on Zephyria Prime, Emperor Corthax watched the battle feeds with growing anger. What should have been a simple conquest was turning into an embarrassment. He opened a channel to Admiral Zix. "Why have you not crushed these primitives? The entire galaxy is watching." Zix hesitated before responding. For the first time in his career, he felt uncertainty. "Your Excellency, the humans are different. They don't fight like any enemy we faced. They adapt, they sacrifice. They seem to grow stronger with every defeat. I'm beginning to think the old warnings." "Enough." Corthax cut him off. "I don't want excuses. Use whatever force necessary. Turn their cities to glass if you must. But I want Earth conquered within the next cycle." As the Zephyrian fleet prepared for a more devastating assault, something changed on Earth. The initial chaos of the invasion had given way to a coordinated global response. Scientists who had once competed now shared information freely. Military forces that had been enemies days before now fought side by side. The invasion had done something no human leader had ever achieved. It had united the species. And in that unity, something awakened. The human species had always possessed remarkable potential, held back by their own divisions and conflicts. But now, faced with extinction, those barriers fell away. Minds that had been focused on petty disputes turned to a single purpose: survival. The Zephyrians had made a fatal error. They had assumed humans were just another primitive species to be conquered. They had ignored the warnings, dismissed the ancient records that spoke of humanity's hidden strength. They had provoked a sleeping giant. As night fell across Earth, the real battle was about to begin. In hidden laboratories and military bases, humans were preparing their response. They had learned from the first encounters, adapted to Zephyrian tactics, and were ready to show the Empire why the Galactic Council had issued that warning so long ago. The Zephyrian fleet hung in orbit, confident in their technological superiority. Below them, 7 billion humans prepared to prove that sometimes the will to survive could overcome any disadvantage. The Empire thought they were conquering another primitive world. Instead, they had awakened humanity's true potential. The stage was set for a confrontation that would reshape the galaxy. The Zephyrians had ignored the warning about humans. Now they would pay the price for their arrogance. The empire that had ruled for 10,000 years was about to learn why the ancient races had feared the day when humanity would finally unite and reach for the stars. Admiral Zix stood on his bridge, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath his fleet. Something felt wrong. The planet was too quiet, the resistance too coordinated. His instincts, honed by centuries of warfare, screamed danger. But it was too late to turn back now. The Emperor had given his orders. As the Zephyrian fleet prepared for the final assault, strange signals began emanating from Earth. Not communications, but something else. Something that made the ship's sensors flicker and their computers struggle to process. Whatever the humans were planning, it was about to begin. The ancient warning echoed in Velnak's mind as he watched from Zephyria Prime. Their potential, once awakened, cannot be contained. He wondered if they were about to witness the truth of those words. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled the galaxy through force and fear, but they had never faced a species that thrived on challenge, that grew stronger when threatened, that possessed an indomitable will to not just survive, but to overcome. The first phase of the battle was over. Humanity had survived the initial assault. Now, as dawn broke across Earth's continents, the second phase was about to begin. The hunters were about to become the hunted. Humanity's awakening. The dawn of humanity's counteroffensive began not with massive weapons or flashy technology, but with something far more powerful, the collective will of a species pushed to its limits. Across Earth, in bunkers and command centers, humans initiated what they had code-named Project Unity. It was audacious, perhaps impossible, but it was their only chance. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before a holographic display in the underground facility beneath Geneva. Around her, scientists from every nation worked in perfect synchronization. Former rivals now shared their most guarded secrets, combining technologies in ways that would have been unthinkable just weeks ago. Neural link established, reported Dr. James Mitchell from his station. We're ready to begin Phase 1. Sarah nodded, her fingers dancing across the control panel. Remember, we get one shot at this. The Zephyrians won't fall for the same trick twice. Above them, Admiral Zix prepared his fleet for what he assumed would be the final bombardment. His ships moved into position, weapons charging for an orbital strike that would reduce Earth's major cities to molten glass. The Emperor's orders had been clear: total subjugation or total destruction. But as the Zephyrian weapons powered up, something unexpected happened. Every electronic device on Earth, every phone, computer, television, and radio, suddenly synchronized. 7 billion human minds, connected through technology and united by purpose, focused on a single thought: survive. The effect was immediate and unprecedented. The combined electromagnetic field generated by billions of synchronized devices created a resonance that interfered with Zephyrian targeting systems. But more than that, it awakened something dormant in human DNA, an evolutionary adaptation that had been waiting for just such a moment of species-wide unity. Admiral Zix watched in confusion as his weapons systems flickered and failed. What's happening? Why can't we lock onto targets? His science officer's scales paled, a sign of extreme distress in their species. Admiral, we're detecting massive neural activity from the planet's surface. The humans, they're somehow interfacing directly with their technology. Their brain patterns are synchronizing on a global scale. Before Zix could respond, the first human counterstrike began. Not with ships or missiles, but with something far more subtle and devastating. Human hackers, their minds now operating at unprecedented speeds, began infiltrating Zephyrian systems. The Empire's technology, never designed to defend against such an organic digital hybrid attack, began to falter. On Earth, General Patricia Williams coordinated the military response from the rebuilt Pentagon. The unity of purpose had done more than just awaken latent abilities. It had erased old grudges and rivalries. Russian, American, Chinese, and European forces moved as one, their strategies flowing together like water finding its path. "Launch the prototypes," Williams ordered. From hidden silos around the world, humanity's answer to the Zephyrian threat rose into the sky. These weren't just missiles or fighters. They were hybrid craft, constructed in the past weeks using reverse-engineered alien technology combined with human innovation. What the Zephyrians had developed over millennia, humans had improved upon in days. Commander John Way led the first squadron of hybrid fighters. As his craft broke through the atmosphere, he felt the neural interface connecting him not just to his fighter, but to every other pilot in the force. They moved as one organism, reacting instantly to each other's thoughts and intentions. The Zephyrian fighters, used to facing enemies that fought as individuals, were unprepared for this level of coordination. Human pilots executed maneuvers that should have been impossible, their crafts dancing through space in perfect harmony. Where one pilot saw an opening, all pilots knew instantly. Where one found a weakness, all exploited it simultaneously. Admiral Zix watched his fighter screens with growing horror. His elite pilots, each with decades of combat experience, were being systematically dismantled by humans who had been flying spacecraft for mere weeks. It defied everything he knew about warfare. "Impossible," he muttered. "They're reading our moves before we make them." His tactical officer's report was even more disturbing. "Admiral, their response times are beyond biological limits. It's as if they're operating with a shared consciousness. And sir, their technology is evolving in real time. Each engagement teaches them something new, and that knowledge is instantly shared across their entire force." On Zephyria Prime, Emperor Korthax watched the battle feeds with disbelief turning to rage. His mighty Seventh Fleet, the pride of the Empire, was being pushed back by a species that had barely achieved spaceflight. The other member races of the Empire were watching too, and whispers of doubt began to spread. Velnak, the aged advisor, approached the throne carefully. "Your Excellency, perhaps we should consider the ancient warnings now. The humans are displaying abilities that—" "Silence," Korthax roared. "Deploy the dreadnoughts. If conventional weapons won't break them, we'll use the planet killers." The Zephyrian dreadnoughts were weapons of last resort, massive ships designed to crack planets open. As they moved into position, humanity's response shifted. The neural network that connected them pulsed with new urgency. Every human on Earth felt the approaching threat, and their collective will focused on a single imperative: the invaders must not be allowed to destroy their world. In laboratories around the globe, scientists working in perfect harmony achieved breakthrough after breakthrough. Dr. Chen's team cracked the code of Zephyrian shield technology, not by understanding it intellectually, but by intuiting its patterns through their enhanced neural state. Within hours, Earth's defenders had not just replicated the shields, they had improved them. The first dreadnought fired its planet killer weapon. The beam of concentrated energy could have split Earth's crust, ending all life in seconds. Instead, it struck a barrier that shouldn't have existed, a planetary shield generated by the collective will and technology of humanity. The beam dispersed harmlessly across the barrier's surface. Admiral Zix stared at his instruments in shock. That's our shield technology, but modified, enhanced. How did they? He never finished the sentence. Human boarding parties, using teleportation technology reverse-engineered and improved from captured Zephyrian equipment, materialized throughout his fleet. The boarders weren't just soldiers. They were scientists, engineers, teachers, and ordinary citizens who had volunteered for this moment. Each one connected to the collective, each one sharing knowledge and skills in real time. The battle inside the Zephyrian ships was unlike anything in the Empire's military history. Humans adapted to every tactic, learned from every encounter, and shared every piece of knowledge instantly. A teacher from Japan who discovered a weakness in Zephyrian armor shared it with a farmer from Kenya who was boarding another ship entirely. A child in Brazil who understood an alien computer interface passed that knowledge to soldiers in orbit. The Zephyrian Empire had built its power on technological superiority and military might, but they had never faced an enemy that could learn and adapt at the speed of thought, that grew stronger with every challenge, that turned diversity into unity. Within hours, half of the Zephyrian fleet was under human control. The mighty warships that had conquered 1,000 worlds now served new masters. Admiral Zix, captured on his own bridge, watched in amazement as humans operated his ship's systems with an intuitive understanding that had taken his own people centuries to develop. How? He asked Commander Zhang, who had led the boarding party that captured the flagship. How did you learn so quickly? Zhang's expression was calm but determined. We didn't just learn, Admiral. We evolved. Your invasion forced us to become what we always had the potential to be. You united us in a way we never could have achieved on our own. The remaining Zephyrian ships began to retreat, but humanity wasn't finished. Using the captured vessels and their newfound abilities, humans gave chase. The hunters had become the hunted, and the empire that had ruled through fear was about to experience it themselves. Emperor Korthax watched in impotent rage as his fleet fled. The unthinkable had happened. The Zephyrian Empire had been defeated, not by superior technology or greater numbers, but by a species that had transformed itself in the face of extinction. As the human-controlled fleet approached Zephyria Prime, panic spread throughout the Empire. Member races that had been held in check by fear of Zephyrian power began to rebel. The empire that had stood for 10,000 years crumbled in a matter of days. But humanity didn't come as conquerors. When the human fleet arrived at Zephyria Prime, they'd broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. Sarah Chen, now speaking for United Earth, appeared on every screen. We are humanity, she began. We didn't seek this conflict, but we won't shrink from it. To the Zephyrian Empire and all who would threaten our world, we offer you a choice. Join us in building a galaxy based on cooperation and mutual growth, or face the consequences of your aggression. We have awakened to our potential, and we choose to use it not for conquest, but for the betterment of all. The message reverberated across the galaxy. The ancient races that had written the warnings nodded in understanding. Humanity had passed the test. They had faced extinction and emerged not as conquerors, but as leaders. Emperor Korthax, his pride shattered and his empire in ruins, had one final card to play. Hidden beneath his palace was an ancient weapon, a device that could destroy entire star systems. As he moved to activate it, he found his way blocked by Velmac. The warnings were real. Your Excellency, the old advisor said softly, the humans possess something our empire never understood. The ability to grow stronger through adversity, to unite in the face of threat, to evolve when evolution is needed. They are what the galaxy needs. Korthax's hand hesitated over the weapon's activation key. Around him, his own people were already choosing sides. Many had been inspired by humanity's message, tired of rule through fear and force. The Emperor's final moment came not in battle, but in a quiet room beneath his palace. Faced with the choice between destroying everything or accepting a new order, he finally understood the warning his ancestors had ignored. Humans weren't dangerous because of their weapons or their technology. They were dangerous because they possessed something far more powerful, the ability to change, to grow, to become more than they were. As Korthax stepped away from the weapon, the Zephyrian Empire officially surrendered. The galaxy watched as humanity, the species they had dismissed as primitive, emerged as its new leaders, not through conquest, but through the simple act of surviving and growing stronger. The Galactic Council reconvened for the first time in millennia. As humanity took its place among the ancient races, the old warnings were finally understood. Humans weren't just another species. They were evolution's answer to stagnation, growth's response to decay. Sarah Chen stood before the council, no longer just a scientist, but a representative of her entire species. "We don't seek to rule," she said. "We seek to grow, to learn, and to help others do the same." The invasion awakened something in us, but that potential was always there. We offer to share what we've learned, to help the galaxy evolve as we have. The ancient races nodded in agreement. The warnings about humanity had been real, but not in the way anyone had understood. Humans weren't a threat to peace. They were a catalyst for growth. Their greatest weapon wasn't technology or military might, but their indomitable will to adapt and overcome. As news of the new galactic order spread, worlds that had lived in fear of the Zephyrian Empire began to hope. Humanity's message of cooperation and mutual growth resonated across species and cultures. The age of empire through conquest was ending. The age of unity through diversity had begun. On Earth, the neural network that had connected humanity during the crisis remained, though less intense. Humans had tasted what they could become when united, and they chose to maintain that connection. Not as a hive mind, but as a species that had learned to value both individuality and unity. The reconstruction began immediately. Cities were rebuilt, but not as they had been. Using acquired Zephyrian technology and human innovation, Earth transformed into something new, a world that balanced nature and technology, tradition and progress. The captured Zephyrian fleet was repurposed. Instead of weapons of war, the ships became vessels of exploration and aid. Human crews, joined by volunteers from other species, set out to help worlds damaged by the old empire's rule. Admiral Zix, now serving as a military advisor to the new Galactic Council, watched Earth from orbit. The planet that had seemed so primitive now shone with promise. He had fought against humanity and lost, but in that loss, he had gained something greater, understanding. "You never really conquered us," Commander Zhang told him during one of their meetings. "You freed us from our own limitations, our divisions, our fears. In trying to destroy us, you helped us become what we were meant to be." The galaxy entered a new age. Trade routes that had been restricted under Zephyrian rule opened freely. Knowledge that had been hoarded was shared. Species that had never cooperated began working together, inspired by humanity's example. But humanity's greatest contribution wasn't technology or military power. It was hope. Hope that any species, no matter how divided or primitive they might seem, could evolve when faced with challenge. Hope that unity didn't mean uniformity, that strength could come from diversity. The ancient warning about humanity had been both right and wrong. Yes, humans were unlike any other species. Yes, their potential, once awakened, couldn't be contained. But that potential wasn't for destruction. It was for growth, for connection, for lifting others up. As the years passed, the story of humanity's awakening became legend. How a single invasion had transformed a divided world into the galaxy's greatest force for good. How a species that had barely left its planet had shown the ancient empires a better way. The Zephyrians had ignored the warning about humans. They had paid the price for their arrogance. But in the end, that price had purchased something invaluable. A new beginning for the entire galaxy. The empire that had ruled through fear for 10,000 years had fallen in days. In its place rose something far greater. A galactic community built on cooperation, growth, and the indomitable human spirit. The warning had been true. Humans were not what they appeared to be. But what they truly were wasn't a threat. It was a promise. A promise that no matter how dark the night, dawn would always come. A promise that in unity there was strength, in diversity there was power, and in the face of extinction, there was evolution. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson of all. Never underestimate humanity. Not because they were dangerous, but because they had the unique ability to transform challenge into opportunity, conflict into cooperation, and potential enemies into allies. The age of empires was over. The age of unity had begun, and at its heart stood humanity, not as conquerors, but as catalysts for the greatest transformation the galaxy had ever seen.